In this part, we discuss the lease rental and managing lease contracts in Moderan. So here we have the complete list of the rent roll with all the contracts. And now let's take a closer look at one of the contracts. So here we see a contract and the parties in the contract. The general view shows you all the commercial terms of the leases. So after the parties, you see the different starting dates, as is common with commercial premises especially. Signing date usually comes way before the transfer of the space, and sometimes also there can be a bit of a delay in the start of rent payments in retail premises especially. Now you also have here the end of rental periods as it's listed in the contract, and in addition to that we have an actual end date which you fill in once the tenant actually moves out of the space. And then you can also list here what is the reason for the termination, so you have it for the statistics in the future. Now, next step is an overview of the actual spaces that the tenant is occupying. So first the building and which actual spaces. So here, for example, we see that this tenant is occupying 4 different spaces on 4 different floors and which sections there are, and they're all offices. Now, next to it, you see the guarantee. So guarantee can typically be either a deposit of a certain amount, like 2 months rent or something like that. But it can also be a guarantee letter or a bank guarantee. And the latter always have an end date. So you can list the end date here and Moderan will send you a reminder to make sure you always have a valid guarantee. Same goes for insurance. If you require your tenants to have an insurance, which we often see, for example, in retail spaces and restaurants in most particularly, then you want to make sure that the tenant actually has a valid insurance, and you can list then the end of insurance date here, and again, Moderan sends you a reminder. In addition, we also automatically calculate the WAULT for you to show you how much time you have actually left on this contract. And in addition, if you want to track how your leases are doing compared to your targets for these spaces, then in the spaces you can also list the target rent, and then you see what is the difference to the target in this particular lease. Now, and the next part we come to is the rent and fees sections. So first of all, it's important what is the total leasable size in square meters, and we see it here nicely. And then all the different fees that you're charging your tenant. So the contract view always shows you the current fees that are currently active and charged. So the rent per square meter and per month, then any other type of fee that you need to define, for example, cleaning or anything else. And then you can go and take a closer look of how the fees have actually changed. So here we see that the rent has already gone through a few changes in the past. So the gray part is listed in the past. And the white parts then display the currently active fees. And in addition to the currently active fees also, if you have, for example, step rent agreements, then Moderan enables you to add the future changes or the future steps in rent upfront. So once you sign the contract, you put in all the steps. Moderan will automatically send you a reminder that there's a step coming up and will then calculate the rent accordingly from this new upcoming step. And then later you have an overview nicely of all the changes, and these fees are then accordingly calculated for the reports also for the past periods. Okay, and now when we go back to the general terms of the contract, and then the next section is termination clauses. So does the tenant or the landlord have an option for early termination? And if they do, is there any penalty for that? And then the last part is most important. So what happens when the end of rental period starts approaching? Here we have a special field for that. So in most contracts, there's a clause that says that before the actual end of the contract, a certain number of months, either side has to notify if they plan to extend the contract, if they want to renegotiate the terms or something like that. And this is particularly important for contracts that have an automatic extension clause. So you want to make sure you don't miss this deadline, and Moderan has a special reminder about that. Now, once we go on, we also see the indexation clauses. In indexation, the classic, of course, that we're seeing very often is a consumer price index, and it might have some brackets. So, for example, a minimum and a maximum percentage to be indexed. Then the most important part is, of course, the next indexation date. So you know when it's coming up, and Moderan can send you a reminder about that upfront. And also, if in the contract you have an obligation to notify the tenant before the actual indexation is implemented. If you have this obligation, you want to make sure you don't miss it. So again, Moderan sends you a reminder about that. And here below, we have the list of all the reminders that we automatically send you. You can, of course, adjust the periods as you need. Furthermore, you can also add your own reminder. You just write when and what you need reminded about, and you also get an automatic reminder here. Now, going on, you also see here the contact people for the tenant, their contacts, their roles, so you have an overview of any contacts. And in this section, we also see you can add any sort of notes you need about this contract for yourself. And here you can also add the files and further notes that are sorted then chronologically, so it's like an overview of your relationship with the tenant. You can add specific files here, or also links to your document management system to have an overview of the contract. Now, in addition, you can see here a bunch of fields we didn't cover and that have different formats. It's because in this demo database, we love to have our customers play around with Moderan. And here you see that there's a feature in Moderan for adding your own types of fields. So if a Moderan general terms don't cover any of the topics that you specifically need, then you can add your own type of custom field into the rental contracts to have an overview of. So this is a very convenient feature that a lot of our customers use as well. And one more bit about the contract itself before we take a peek into the rental is the history feature. So this means that all the changes in the lease agreements are automatically logged by Moderan. So you see exactly when, who changed, which field, what was the previous value, and what is the new value. So if anything should happen and somebody should make a mistake, then you can easily find also in the history what changes happened and if you need to correct them back to the previous value, for example. So this is Moderan contract overview. And now what's important is when we go back into the rental view, then rental in Moderan is the most comprehensive and flexible because it includes all the fields from all the contracts. You can then select which fields exactly you want to see because Moderan remembers individually for each user your setup of a view. So each user in your organization can design their view as they're needed. And then you can select the fields, also the fields that you yourself added as custom fields in Moderan. So for example, we see this new field here to also enable you to do a report or overview on the topics that we haven't covered in standard terms. And then, of course, you can adjust the view to show you more conveniently the sizes. You can move around also the fields. And then you can sort by each column. So, for example, we have sorting by tenant here. My favorite field here is usually the last modified, which helps you identify which contract was last modified in Moderan. So we see one here. And any other sort of field that you need. So for example, if you want to sort it by the upcoming end of rental period. So yeah, we need to first then add the end of rental period, and then we can sort by the end of rental period to see when the dates are coming up. So this is a very flexible tool that enables you to have any sort of overview of the lease portfolio that you have. And of course, you have an automatic export to Excel on this view, as well as any other view from Moderan. So this covers the lease contracts and rental part that Moderan also gives you in order to help you be more efficient and transparent in managing your properties.